Good. So, hello everyone. Nice that you're here. My name is Suzanne Daniels. I am a global black belt for developer productivity at Microsoft. One of the fun things I do, because it sounds a bit like what does a black belt for productivity do then? Um, we focus on everything that we build on the GitHub side and the Microsoft side, and we support our customers with that. Which is sometimes also confusing because we have all the tools that GitHub uses and the Microsoft tools. So, like if you think that like a lot of Teams messages is bad, just add a pile of Slack messages to that. I have a colleague here in the room who has basically, I think, the same problem, and it's always confusing keeping multiple systems. But the good thing is that we are able to help our customers make sense of things like, okay, how can we be more productive? How can we increase productivity? How can we make our developers more happy? How can we keep on innovating? How do we keep on learning new stuff? How are we going to use that new technology? And these are exactly the questions that we get to help customers with this, which is super fun to do. But I wasn't always a global black belt, you know. I started out software development when I was 17, actually. I was at school. I was having an education. I was preparing to become this software developer. And at the time in school, we learned Turbo Pascal. We learned assembly. We learned all kinds of programming languages that were around a little bit before I was there as well. So out there, what happened was that this company, Microsoft, released this software, Windows 95, and it was picking up. People were really interested in running Windows 95 on their PCs to create software for that. There was a broad adoption. It was really picking up. And with that also, of course, modern programming languages. And I was at school and I was looking at what was happening and having conversations with my teammates, with the teachers, with the school board, like, hey, this is happening. That looks kind of interesting. Maybe you can teach us that. That looks kind of nice. And they were like, yeah, you know, the thing with a programming framework where you can just drag and drop some boxes and, you know, create the GUI and just add a few lines of code, that's not real programming. That's not, you know, if we all start doing that, what's the next thing? We'll all be out of a job because, like, it's a lot of work that we do currently. This makes everybody become a programmer. So yeah, we don't know about that. I left school and I became a programmer. I had my first project was actually porting Clipper. So my old education was somewhat useful, but porting Clipper to Visual Basic. Yeah, that's where my journey started. But yeah, back then there was not a lot of frameworks to choose from, and not a lot of programming languages to choose from. So it was fairly easy to get started. You had to build basically everything yourself. But yeah, Microsoft was around too. And I don't know, we had like these products and they got released, release cycles of every 2 years. And it's working good. And it consisted of a few phases. Like first was the planning, and people would get into a room and figure out, what are we gonna build next? What is it that our customers really want to have? Let's imagine what that is and have all these meetings and just roll it out. Then the programming would start, and then we would test it, and then we would ship the beta. But yeah, what happens if you work in this way? So you start like imagining what it is, and you start building something, and you're like, hey, this is a shiny new feature. This is a shiny new product. yeah, you get the feedback of the customer quite late, and yeah, it was not always what the customer wanted. So the customer gave their feedback, and yeah, but basically all the work that we needed to do to ship the product and to get everything ready was already booked. It was already planned. And yeah, one of the things that that was also a fun anecdote is that you had this M1 and that M2 part, but it was not acceptable to have an M3 part. So because that's of course not successful if you need another a period of time to build the software. So it was extended basically. And yeah, so what happened is that a customer would get a feature and would say, well, okay, yeah, this is kind of nice, and we'll get to it in the next release. But yeah, it's the 2-year release cycles. But what I want to point out is, just imagine what kind of company we are today, right? You'll probably know the XKCD, I think it's XKCD with all the product teams where they point guns at each other, long release cycles, not really that agile way of working, not meeting maybe a deadline somewhere. Yeah, look at the company today. Like innovation is at an all-time high. We're going fast. Everybody's looking at what we're building, and basically we're doing quite all right. So a lot of things have changed over the years. So there were a few things that made us successful, and I think that they're relevant. A lot of companies are having this same struggle. I've worked at a few where we had our ways of working in a waterfall manner, not being able to modernize, not being able to learn new technologies, not being able to remove technical debt, for instance, waiting on tickets instead of innovating. So I want to share a few examples with you, which you could do yourself, apply yourself in your company. I'll share some nice books to read up on, and yeah, I hope that that you will enjoy this. Obviously, one of the things that helped us a lot was DevOps, embracing DevOps, right? Who here is very enthusiastic when they hear the term DevOps? Yeah, okay. It changed a bit over the years, and it makes sense. DevOps has been around now for well over a decade, and it brought us a lot. We learned how to ship things faster, automate things, have better collaboration between dev and ops, and we got to build better quality products. We got to get more collaboration. We figured out that it helps to not have this big wall between dev and ops. And it got us very, very far. In the years, DevOps had an evolution. Like there's multiple evolutions that happened with DevOps. But the reason that that is that every time that something was kind of solved, we figured out something new that also was important. And the whole people, process, technologies basically kind of became people, process, and tooling companies. Because the reasoning is that every problem that you have, there's a company that comes and say, hey, I have a solution for your problem. Don't make fun about DevOps, the name. But we have a tool for that. We can help you with that. And what happened over time is that we were not really able to solve all of the problems to really become successful. So, for instance, at some point we figured, oh, we need to add SRE. That's a good best practice. Let's adopt that, and let's all talk about SRE and say observability really is important to add. That is really great, but with that comes a lot of tools, right? And one other thing that happened is that the technology changed. So if I go back to when I started, there were not a lot of programming languages, not a lot of frameworks, right? You could build everything yourself. But now, if you want to create software, you have multiple roles that you need, different knowledge domains that you need. The tooling, don't get me even started about the tooling, right? Because there's tools for basically anything and everything. There are so many frameworks to choose from, so many languages, and then different versions of those. So it's a lot. And it's a lot of new rules that we have. So that means that collaboration, for instance, is also becoming more complex. And there was this research, and in the State of DevOps report of last year it was, and they said that 82% of the companies were actually stuck somewhere in their DevOps journey. So they started off fine, but at some point they hit the limits of what they could achieve with that. So on top of all that I shared, I just wanted to, I don't like the number slides, but this always is a good slide to see and look at and appreciate how beautiful the CNCF landscape is nowadays. And this is only cloud native, right? There's so many tools. We want to add AI, we want to have microservices, we understand the value of APIs, we appreciate security more, but yeah, for everything we need a tool. So I want to just test something with you here. How many tabs do you have open when you do your day-to-day work? To do your work, only to do your work. So who has 10 tabs open, at least? At least 10 tabs. There's somebody who doesn't even open the browser. That's good. So 20? 30? Yeah, okay. So there's about, on average, 16 tools that, that you use to do your job. I do this exercise every now and then, and it's really bad. I, at one point, had a few sessions with people to just grab all the screenshots of all the interfaces that belong to those tools. I was like, it all does not look the same. Stuff has their own language, their own CLI commands, their own interfaces, and then when you wanna switch, you're actually have to leave your IDE, you go to your web browser, you get the MFA thing, and you search for your phone, and you do that, and you log in. And by the time that I'm there, I'm utterly confused because there's always 18 messages and all kinds of things that I still needed to do. It's super confusing, super distracting. And even if I'm able to do what I needed to do, and I go back, I'm like, you know, I'm really out of that flow. And it takes a lot of time to get back into that. I don't know if you recognize this, but on average, it's 23 minutes that it takes you to regain your focus. That's problematic. One of the other things that we figured out was that when we, earlier on in the development process, for instance, worry about security, then the risk or the impact of a security risk will be a lot smaller. So the costs associated with, for instance, cross-site scripting will go down drastically. So instead of having a cross-site scripting issue and ending up at Aftonbladet and then costing you millions, you already discover it somewhere early on in your development process. That's great, right? But it also comes with a tool. It also comes with responsibility. Suddenly, we all need to, for instance, care about security and parse that message. That is really great, but I'm standing here, and if I look up and I look at shift left, it looks a bit like a tsunami coming my way, right? Because it's not one thing that we want to shift left, we want to shift a lot of things left. So this ends up in a quite difficult place. how are you going to cope with all that? Right? How are we going to stay effective? And how are we going to be able to do a new project? So what we see is that with a poor developer experience, things will at some point stop to scale. You cannot add more engineers to solve the problem. Basically, adding an engineer might make it worse, because how are you even gonna onboard that engineer, right? There is this lack at some point, difficulty of knowledge sharing. So it can be that you have this organizational knowledge that is hard to access, or that leaves at some point. There's all these things that make life a bit sad, actually. And it's weird, because when you think of it, we're all talking now about AI, right? We're all talking about using the most modern technology to scale, to build great apps, right? Everybody probably has somewhere a project in their company where they are like, oh, we really need to innovate. And you'll determine that. You'll determine, here in this room, the success that your company will have with that. And that's a bit weird, right? Because we depend on software engineers, engineers in general. We depend all on each other to have that innovation, to embrace these new technologies. But it's not going any further. So this is a really sad story, basically, after lunch. A bit heavy, maybe. So let's look at how we could improve that. So I want to ask you a question. So who here thinks that in their current job that they should actually improve the developer experience? Let's show some hands. Do you think that you can improve something? Okay, cool. So keep it up, please. It's good. Yes. So who measures with DORA metrics? Okay, few down. Who measures the developer experience? Ooh. Okay, so if we don't measure developer experience, if we don't measure what is wrong, how are we even gonna fix that? Because if you don't know what is happening, it is easy to say, well, you know, we don't like this tool. We think this is taking a long time. I'm unsatisfied. It takes me so much effort to collaborate. Great, these are all valid points. Come think of it, when I look back at my presentation so far, there's a few things that you might recognize and say like, oh, this is not a good idea. But if you don't measure, how are you going to improve? So what I want to share is, we've basically gone through the same exercise at Microsoft. We always like to understand what we're actually doing before we're going to make huge investments and change things around. So we identified 4 key areas that are essential to improving developer experience. So that is, of course, the speed and the innovation. That's the shiny stuff, right? But on the other hand, it is important that you are able to get and attract the talent, and you're able to keep the talent, right? But also, does the engineering group that you have, do they really feel that they can add something? Do they have this sense of purpose, for instance? Trust and quality is, of course, super important here, where quality can also be on security or incidents. And collaboration and skill, because collaboration is super important, because you need each other to build software. Software building is a team sport, and it's a creative team sport, to be very specific. And skill is important, because you need to be able to actually build the software and release the software, right? So these things combined are we identified as being super important. So there are some things that we do, like for, yeah, sure, we have the DORA metrics, but we also have a survey that we send out so that we can actually ask our engineers what they think of things. What do you think of the internal tooling, the application platform that you're using? How are you? How was your onboarding? How are you feeling a part of this organization? Collaboration. Yeah, of course, we care a lot about open source, but the equivalent for inner collaboration is inner source. These are all things that we think that we can track, and that they tell something about how we're actually doing. And when you measure this, you can also identify where it's not going so well, and then prioritize. What is the most important thing that we can change today? More importantly, what are we not going to use as a KPI? Because you can measure a lot of things. You can measure the lines of code a senior engineer produces. Great. But what does it tell you actually? Does it tell you that the quality of the code is also good? Does it maybe tell you that the engineer producing this many lines of code isn't actually going into a burnout? How do you know? You only know if you measure it. But you don't put them as KPIs because it does not make sense. Because it probably will not tell you anything about the product that you're building. So what does it help to create a dashboard? Just only show the things that are relevant and only use KPIs that are relevant. So be very intentional. Things that are quite important, for instance, is that what the customer thinks of the software that we're building. Is that new feature that we developed, that we spent so much time on in this sprint, is that feature accepted by the customer? Is the customer happy with it? What's the rating? Did the users go up? Is the new feature or the new service adopted? Those are the important things. How much time did it take us from an idea to actually run it in production? And of course, is it still working when customers are using the services that we provide them, using the software that we provide them? These are key things, because in the end of the day, what is important to us is that customers like to use our software, that their feedback is being used to improve it, and that the software is stable and secure. So these are the things that we care about. Now, how could you actually approach this within your organization that you're currently working? There's this framework which is called the SPACE framework. And the SPACE framework measures on five different categories. There's some example here about what you could measure, but it kind of follows the same elements that I just discussed that we use internally. So when you are considering improving your developer experience, a framework like this might actually help you understand better where you would like to improve. There's this example. I worked for a customer, and we used a tool called DevEx, and that tool that is following the SPACE framework, and it's a survey tool. And what came out of that survey tool was that a team was not performing at all. There were all kinds of red flags because of the combination of feeling a sense of purpose, but also the metrics that we had were also not that good. So combining everything, there were only red flags, and we were wondering what was wrong. So what do you do when you get metrics or when you get a survey and you don't really understand what is happening there? Why is it so bad? And you go talk to them. So what we did was actually have a conversation with the engineering team, and it was a nice conversation, but we really were not able to get to the bottom of it until the PO left. And then suddenly we came to realize that actually the reason that engineers did not feel empowered was that the solution that they had to build was pretty much already thought out. So they actually just got an assignment, like build this in this way. This is how you solve the problem. That's not motivating, I think. Do you recognize that? Would you be happy like with that situation? So there's only one way to find that out. You don't get that just from the numbers. You have to dig a little bit deeper to understand it. One thing, and I'm gonna go on the platform engineering, but one thing that people often talk about is about autonomous teams. Yes, because with platform engineering we can make our teams autonomous. But autonomy in itself is also a scary thing, because how are you gonna control what you're doing? How are you as a company gonna get the outcomes that you want? Well, one thing that really can help is using OKRs. So if you move from waterfall, if you move to teams that are working in one of the agile methodologies, if you really want to make sure that engineers have a say in what they're doing, OKRs are basically a good thing to look at, because you have the company priorities, engineering group priorities, but you can also determine as a team what actually is important. What are you going to do with that, right? So you get a lot more say in what you're actually doing. This is a good book to read if you want to learn more about OKRs. So some things that have changed also in the culture at Microsoft is that if you go back a little bit, like the planning phase where people were in a room and they were having discussions on how you actually would build the next thing. This is another way of doing it, right? So we imagine that our customers would be happy with this and this functionality. Let's try it. Let's try it. Let's just ship it and let's gather the feedback so that we can learn from that. Let's do that as fast as possible, because then we're going to create better products. One other thing, and this is also a bit relating to measuring what matters, be able to get that feedback from the customers. That is a huge change, because if you are able to gather more feedback and you process the feedback, you can rapidly improve the products that you're building. But yeah, talking about people. So one other thing that we did was we lose a lot of time in collaboration, and some things don't really make sense. If you are working with new technology and you look at the number of knowledge domains that have been added and the number of teams and the number of roles that you need to actually build one service or one app, it does not make sense to be stuck in an organogram that is 15 years old, because you spend a lot of time working around it. So what we figured is that when we would actually move different roles into an engineering group, that would already be a lot better. But then we still have ops or SRE. So yeah, we still need to find ways to better collaborate. So what if we would all be in one team and we would move to a feature team, right? So having all the roles that are needed to develop software and run the software, and we would have them all in one team. That will break down walls and will break down a lot of that time that you need to collaborate, right? 36% of the time is wasted on collaboration. So why not remove that? So by owning a specific service, by owning a specific product or a feature, you can actually go a lot faster because you don't have all that waste, and it's easier to align on what you're building and how you're using technology. So instead of shopping around, you try to get everything aligned across the whole stack. But that's our story. So if you are interested in this topic, there's this great book, and that's called Team Topologies. This is one of the archetypes of teams that you could use. If I would compare what we're doing, this would come the closest to how we operate. We also have a platform team. We also have teams that are specialists on something. But in the end of the day, what matters is that we achieve a fast flow. We remove as much friction as possible. So this is a good read and a very interesting one with inspiring ideas. But yeah, we still need to establish and work with our platforms, right? So I want to spin up a new project. I'm this lead engineer, and I have a new project, and I actually want to, have this sandbox environment because it's a new project, and I first want to test some things and, work on an MVP. Great. I need an environment. So what I'm gonna do? Well, I have my idea, and I go with my idea to the first team, and the first team is the DevOps team. And they say, yeah, this is nice. We have a monthly team meeting, but you're in luck. It's already next week. So yeah, if you need something, just like come to us and first discuss it before you put out the request to us. Because then we can take a look and make sure that you make no mistakes and we can deliver it. Okay, cool. So then there's the next checkbox, and that's security. So I reach out to security on Slack or Teams, and I get a message like, yeah, thank you. Here's the documentation. Good luck. Read the documentation. Everything is in procedures and processes, and here's the requirements. So you go ahead. But of course, I don't understand that because I don't want to run a production environment. I just want to start with my MVP. And basically, well, if I wanted to do it next sprint, but I'm already not making that because of the DevOps people. So, okay, what am I going to do now? No problem. We have an office hour, so you can come to our office hour, right? And we'll explain it to you. Okay. Then before we can actually run it, they say, okay, but did you follow the checklist? What checklist? In the documentation. What documentation? This documentation. Oh, but I'm not in that system. Okay, well, I found it. I need to process and meet the requirements and change whatever that I have already came up with. And then I can pass the audit, hopefully. But then there's the architecture folks, and the architects are like, oh, but what are you building there? This is not something that we've already built before. We don't know this pattern. So I just wanted to start an MVP, and this is basically what I get into. And I'm in luck because I haven't filed a single ticket yet. But don't get me started if we actually want to deploy services or add a database. And we must submit a ticket and wait days before something magical happens and we get what we want. But yeah, it's a bit easy to say, oh, but then we have to automate everything, and we need to make sure that when you have this project, we throw everything overboard and we prioritize for you to be able to deploy your environment on the cloud. It doesn't really work that way, because it's always a bit of a balancing act, right? You need to improve the systems that you work on, you need to improve the documentation, and it's, in the end of the day, a balancing act between going fast, but also having the safety, right? Because you can build a beautiful, beautiful highway around like a mountain highway, lovely. But you can go really fast, but yeah, you could also drive off the cliff. So we can agree that if you want to go fast, you also need guardrails for safety, right? And the same thing is with everything, right? You need to collaborate, but you also need to make sure that you have the governance in place. You can make a self-service, but the self-service should actually help you build according to your company's best practices and standards and security things that you need to security thing. So one thing that is a bit of a buzzword now, it's platform engineering. but platform engineering is something that really can help you. This is a great definition. If you want to take a picture, that's really good. But I think this is a bit confusing because it doesn't say me much. It doesn't really come to the essence of what you would actually do. It's great to achieve fast flow delivery, but reducing cognitive load. So I'm just going to make it a bit more simple. Platform engineering is about product mentality. So just like you are probably working on some project or a service that is being used by customers at some point, think of your platform that you're using, your application platform, for instance. Think of that as a product. What would that mean? Right? So, for instance, I bought this clicker for way too much money, but I bought it because I learned that this exists because of marketing. And I knew where to buy it, and I knew how to use it. You know, if there's a problem, I can reach out to Logitech and I can reach their support, and they will help me figure out whatever is wrong with the thing and replace it if it's needed. So think of your, I don't know, maybe an AKS cluster that you have, right? How much able are you to use it? How do you know what is the latest features that are there? What is allowed, what is not allowed? You know, it's a lot of things that you actually could do to make it easier to use the product that you're shipping. So for me, like one of the things that makes the biggest difference, it's not the automation, it's not having a shiny self-service button, it's about actually thinking about the product that you're building. And just like I gave a few examples on collecting feedback, collect the feedback, create a roadmap, do marketing, do enablement, make sure that everybody knows what that platform does and how they can land their applications on it. Instead of just like throwing out a message like, hey, here's a shiny new platform, and being that lemonade stand, you know, and waiting until somebody comes and says, oh, you have lemonade. Yeah, I have lemonade. It's, raspberry. Oh, I don't want raspberry. I actually wanted just a coffee. But this is a lemonade stand. Yeah, but I want coffee. You know, that's not. So you need to really build a product and understand the needs. So yeah, some common things that people want to achieve with platform engineering. Of course, we all want self-service, probably, or maybe not, but make it easier to use the platform. Make it easier to use the services that you have. Make it easier to find the documentation, control the costs. These are all valid things to want to achieve with the principles of platform engineering. And on the other hand, we have that product mentality that we really need to have. So still, and this is not new, DevOps is not going away, DevOps is great, use DevOps. Use all that knowledge that's there. DevOps is really done. Like all the books that you could imagine have been written about it. The only thing is missing is a documentary, but probably it will come as well. But leverage these principles. Because the power of platform engineering is that you look at all these principles with a new mindset. Right? So instead of inventing something in a team, try to collaborate. Do inner sourcing. If you write documentation, that's your first inner sourcing project actually. Define how you actually can achieve something. And then when you wrote it all down, how you deploy a new service or how you create a new database from beginning to end, then you will see where is the friction. And you can have a discussion and you can learn how you can actually improve what you have. So don't trust me on it, but this is research, and it actually shows that developers that work at a company that implemented platform engineering or are well on their way to do that, that they're actually quite happy. Below here, it says 36% reduced lead time, but I could also replace this with security, improved security. Like there's a lot of benefits that you have. And platform engineering as a Platform engineering is actually already quite old, but talking about platform engineering and really saying, oh, I'm a platform engineer, that's kind of new. So this is already kind of amazing to see these results. So what do we see happening? Well, we see our customers having this dedicated platform engineering team that build and manage the platform. We have customers that use self-service portals like Backstage. Yeah, thank you. Like Backstage to centralize documentation, to create that shiny self-service button, to work on the problems of ownership and discoverability. So put that all in one portal. But every company has their own take on what is important. And I think that's a good thing. Because instead of looking at, oh, we should automate everything, or oh, we should create self-service, or we should go into a fast flow organization and go on the team topologies way, it is all valid. Because the most important thing is that you address what is the most important to you. What is causing the most friction today, and what is what we can address today? I think that's the most important takeaway. One other takeaway is, bless you, is that when you look at organizations that have adopted platform engineering, it doesn't really matter if it's a bottom-up or top-down initiative. But one thing that really stood out to me is that the companies that are actually successful adopting platform engineering, improving their developer experience, they had an executive that said at some point, yeah, this is important. And that can make the whole difference. Because you can start with a small engineering group to improve, but yeah, if there's no executive support, how long can you sustain that? So that's an important thing. We had the same experience at Microsoft. So over 7-8 years back, Satya Nadella, I think it was around then, he told basically that we would need to prioritize our own productivity over anything else that we're doing. So instead of shipping features, let's first consider how we are working, how we can scale, how we can collaborate. Let's look at our own productivity first. This mindset is super important because in the end of the day, removing your technical debt so that you can go faster later makes a lot of sense. But who has a CEO that says that, you know? It really makes the difference. You are empowered to do that. So what happened is that we established a new group, and it was called One Engineering System. And what they would do is work on the systems that other teams would use. Platform engineering. Build a product that other people can use. So it is both the idea, the mission, like it is to empower our engineering group, but also a set of tools and also a platform. So it's a combination of the things. And what we established is 3 motions. And that is, of course, empowering developers to use the systems in a manner that is compliant, in a manner that is secure, in a manner that they can deploy and create new services as good as possible, according to our best practices and standards and everything that we imagined that would be needed. And also to stay on that path, right? So compliance is basically in all the things that we do. Because you start at the right angle, you can stay on that path as well. And then, yeah, of course, it is also about improving the things that you already have, because nothing is static, and you should be able to improve your products and improve the tools that you provide to the teams. Okay, so let's demystify that a little bit. So yes, of course, you have the engineering system that you need You need your tools to collaborate on software delivery. You need the tools that automate your software development lifecycle, and you need a platform to run on. And for the platform, of course, you need security, you need governance, you need to do operations on that platform. So these are all still there. This is how you layer that cake. But when you want to really enable engineers, we think that using templates is a really good idea. Because the components of CI, CD, security, compliance, if you add that all to one template, or combine multiple templates into one, then you can create that experience where you just like press that one button and have that environment and not go through a manual to add manually maybe observability or anything else. And then when you have that, then you can think about the other things. Like, oh, how can I work with identity? Should I use a developer portal? Should I use a catalog? Is that important to do that? Maybe. But let's start like with the basics, because all the other things are just to enable people, which can be important, but might not be the part where you want to start. Because your environment might look something like this. And this says that you have a lot of services and you basically maybe have everything in store to create self-service. It is just finding the ways to glue it together in the most efficient way, right? Let's forget that very fast. There you go. But yeah, it doesn't really matter where you start. I think the most important takeaway is that you've heard hopefully a few interesting things, that you grab the one that is most important for you today. So you start measuring. I hope that you all will, like next year, will hold up your hand and say, yes, we measure, we know what's wrong. But yeah, when you know, then you address, and then you pick one of the things that are common practices in platform engineering. And then you start improving it, like a little bit, every day, every week, every year. And this is how you gradually improve this. But it is still a journey. We have luckily some things to help you with that. So we have on templating, we have services. You can use ACD, for instance, which is the developer CLI. No, I don't see enthusiasm. Okay, I like it a lot because ACD is a good tool to, for instance, when you talk about putting up a sandbox project according to best practices, I would leverage one of the templates and I use ACD to just spin up that environment. I still have to register it in our internal system that it's there, but it helps me being more productive. Anyways, it was just an example. So landing zones are, of course, also a part of this, right? So reuse what is already there, that is there to help you leverage templates, leverage governance, leverage best practices. And then you glue that all together. So from our platform engineering journey, we created a few products, and that's the great thing of working at Microsoft, is that the tools that we use are actually used by ourselves, right? So we build it, we use it ourselves, and we ship it all the time. So everything that we do, you will see that we are always thinking of adding these base layers of security, of governance, and also always looking for automation in there, because that is how we work as well. And there's platform engineering guidance to help you. We compiled everything that we have learned into this Learn site. The link is here on the screen. And yeah, and if you look at what's next, we think that it is good to have some assembly, but we want to remove that as much as possible. So we're really looking into making it easier to create and interact with our platform from multiple tools, and creating an API actually to make that interfacing more easy. And yeah, about the whole developer portal thing, there's basically 4 places where we see that developers are, And one could be an internal developer portal like Backstage, but most of the work, of course, we do on the CLI, in our terminal app, in our IDE, and more in GitHub Copilot. So what we are aiming for is to provide as much experiences in there, so that you don't need to leave whatever tool that you're using, but can just stay in there and not having to context switch too much. And of course, we need to operate with all the platforms and tools that you're using today. One thing that I quickly wanted to share is that this is an example. I hope that it will start playing though. Yes, let me quickly speed it up a little bit. I wanted to do this live, but it's a bit of an alpha tool. But this example is the Copilot for Azure. So the GitHub Copilot for Azure extension. And what we're basically trying to do is to bring experiences to GitHub Copilot. So for instance, if you want to troubleshoot an application, that you are actually able to leverage an agent to help you a little bit. So in this example, we're gonna ask about this service. It will take a little while and it will answer, but the thing is that I would not need to go to the Azure portal to find out, for instance, why my application is not performing well. So what is happening here is that I'm actually asking about this. I want some more details about this, and I want to know something about why it's not performing well. So there you go. But this is an example how you can make it easier to interact with the platforms that you're using, because you could create an extension yourself that talks to your Backstage, or talks to your documentation system, or talks to your whatever on-premise hosting environment that you've built. So if you have an API that you can talk to, you can probably create similar experiences as well. But this is basically a really nice tool, and it will analyze now what is wrong with my app and have some very smart answer. And this is really enabling people to use your platform without going to a portal, clicking around, where was it? Things shift around a lot. And there you go. So it gives me just that sensible information. This is just the beginning. We're getting started with this, but yeah, just imagine where we are in a year. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention. I hope that you've enjoyed this. Most important takeaway, of course, start small, start where you can improve. And first of all, everybody, when you get back at the office, ask yourself, hey, but how do we actually measure how we can improve? Thank you.